Hello colleagues, this is John Herrera with Muni Temps, Municipal Staffing, and the CitySpeak blog and podcast. Today is Motivational Monday. I wanted to share a thought with you today about when a reorganization teaches you a lesson, or two or three. There's three lessons that I learned from a reorganization that occurred at the city of Imperial Beach when I was the director of finance there in 2005. This whole thought of this podcast for today of the lessons that I learned from a reorganization came from a discussion I had this weekend with my high school daughter, Selena. She's 15 years old, and we were having a conversation about management of public organizations. I explained to my daughter what my experience was with the management of public organizations and what happens when the new chief executive for the city government comes in. The chief executive for a city organization is called the city manager. In some cases, it's city administrator. But as I related my experience to my high school daughter, she says to me, because of some of the lessons that I had learned, she says to me, "So it was your ego, right, Dad? It was your ego that got in the way." Well, I thought about it for a second, and I really meditated on that. Let me tell you the experience, and then you can draw your own conclusion, whether it was my ego, my professional standards, or something else. I'm sure that many of you who are listening to this CitySpeak blog and podcast have experienced a reorganization where you might be bumped down a level or two. So here it is. Here's the background. In 2005, when I was the finance director for the city of Imperial Beach in California, my city manager, Barry Johnson, had moved on to another city. He went to neighboring city of Solana Beach. So a new city manager was hired. I'm not going to mention his name because he's retired and he and I did not agree on some of his decisions. Yet he was the boss, right? You're allowed to agree to a point. But at any rate, getting back to this point about reorganization. At this point in my career in 2005, I had 15 years of work experience as a municipal finance officer, but I had almost 30 years of working experience. And I had been serving at the city of Imperial Beach for about 5.5 years when what I consider to be one of the best city managers in California that I've ever worked for, when he moved on to the neighboring city of Solana Beach, a new city manager came in. He had a new management style, and he also had the notion to bring on board a new assistant city manager. Now keep in mind that up until this point, from 1999 to 2005, I had been able to work directly, reporting directly to the city manager. So there was no assistant city manager. Or if there was, we didn't have to report to the assistant city manager. We have a very small organization at the city of Imperial Beach, very few employees, a few dozen employees. We only served a population of 28,000. But this new city manager brought in a assistant city manager. Believed that he was related to a friend of the city managers, the new city manager that was there. So this new assistant city manager that was put in place now, he's going to be my boss, and he was going to be the boss of the police chief and the fire chief and the director of community development and the director of public works. And basically he came between the city manager and all of us directors. So we were really bumped down one notch on the organizational chart. But again, as a 15 years as a municipal finance officer, working in city government, being a director of finance, I had the bachelor's degree in business and the master's degree in public administration, and I had the certified public accountant license. I was very well positioned professionally. I knew how to do my job. But my management style is one of making decisions quickly. I like to respond to my employees my customers, and the other stakeholders of the organization quickly. And they like that. To the extent that it's possible, we like to make decisions quickly. But when this new assistant city manager came on board, by the way, this new assistant city manager, he came from being a management analyst working in the fire department of another city, a rather similar sized city in San Diego. But he came from being a management analyst to stepping up as the assistant city manager and being the boss over my department and all the other departments. So the new assistant city manager was very slow, relatively speaking, in making decisions. And that was very frustrating for me. Not just for me because I was used to and knew how to make decisions quickly, but because my employees, my customers, and other stakeholders that relied upon me for financial decision making and other decisions that I had to make in my department, it was very frustrating. What used to take me 2 minutes to make a decision because of my working relationship directly with the city manager now took 2 weeks. I now have to go see the assistant city manager, and it took 2 weeks to get a decision. So I had lost the decision-making ability. This was not very satisfying. Now the assistant city manager, he was a super nice guy. I really did love him. I liked him as an individual. He was a really nice guy. But man, he didn't have the experience. He didn't have the stripes to make the kind of decisions and certainly lead experienced directors as he should have before he gets placed in that position. That was my opinion. I think other directors might have had the same. We never really talked about it too much. At least I don't recall that. But as I'm talking to my high school daughter, Selena, she made an observation that he was right on. She says, "Hey, Dad, the organization is more important than you are. You should have just followed the direction of the city manager." Now, where I was at this point in my career, it was very difficult to accept that. Like I said, I was very, very experienced. Financially, I was making a good salary. I wasn't in a lot of debt. I certainly wasn't afraid of losing my job, and I wasn't going to lose my job if I was courteous and professional with this new change. I had a good family life, married life, and everything was going well. But professionally, this was very challenging for me to now have to report to the assistant city manager when I used to be able to go directly to the city manager. So that's something to think about. But the question for me was, what do I do? I am frustrated. And the more I think about it, the more I'm frustrated. Back in 2005, well, what I did back then was I tried hard. I tried to make it work. I tried to be patient. I really did. But after a while, I saw that I just couldn't work in this situation. So I moved on. I went to become an assistant general manager at the Fallbrook Public Utility District. But there's some lessons that I learned from this being bumped down the organizational chart and how I responded to it. Here's the 3 lessons. You can please comment and tell me what your lessons are when you had to deal with this. But my 3 lessons are this. Put your ego aside when you're working in an organization, especially a local government organization like a city organization. The organization is more important than we are. We need to recognize that. My daughter was right. And I kind of knew that already back then. Lesson number 2, the city manager is a chief executive for the municipality. He or she has the right and the managerial prerogative to do whatever they want, and as long as it's not illegal. And number 3, if you can't handle the changes, move on. Don't burn your bridges. So number 1 is put ego aside. The organization is more important than the individual. Number 2, city manager and the chief executive for the organization, they can do whatever they want professionally. That's why we maintain legitimacy in the organization. Lesson 3 is, if you can't handle the changes, move on, but do it gracefully and don't burn bridges. Those are my lessons today for the Motivational Monday of the MuniTemps CitySpeak podcast. Thanks for visiting with me for a few minutes, and please share your comments. Email me or call me, John Herrera with MuniTemps and the CitySpeak blog. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.